Association, to start with that, would be that attorneys receive either through our production or through the county or otherwise some sort of identification card that would identify attorneys as members of the Lebanon County Bar Association, and that they would, members of the Bar Association would be able to have a photo ID card that they could present at the two main entrances of the courthouse, of the municipal building here, to gain access during regular business hours without going through the metal detectors and waiting in line to do so. It was kind of be the general request.
Okay. So you're asking for something different than we have or our county employees have, though?
Correct. Yeah, I think the ask would not be to have any special access to the building, after hours access, anything like that. Literally what I'm familiar with is the county ID card. My suggestion or my thought would be if a card like that was produced either by Central Booking or by another company or whatever, that would just be a photo identification, state on it, David Warner, Buskin Davis, or member of Lebanon County Bar Association or something like that. It would be a photo identification with the name, some identification for the purpose, merely just presenting it to the security guards and allowing them to identify who we are, and then to allow then entrance without waiting through the process.
So it would not access the electronic entry system?
Correct. No after hours access, no electronic access, anything like that, yeah. And I think it would still provide for some method of at least some visual inspection of the person walking through, what they're carrying, what they have, no other doors being accessed, things like that would be the request. The purpose of this comes from, I think, members of the bar complaining that they end up having to wait in long lines on days like Central Court or criminal call to list, where there's maybe several hundred, or at least 100 plus, I would say, criminal defendants, families, friends, those types of people entering the courthouse. I think a very logical argument back is obviously if you get here in enough time, you're going to have to wait in line, but you'd have enough time to get through. I certainly understand security concerns, things like that. I think the reason this is somewhat accepted, or members of the bar feel like it should be accepted, is because our contiguous counties, most of them, the ones I've practiced in, allow for the presentation of a Pennsylvania license to practice law that we receive from the state Supreme Court every year, and your driver's license. Typically those two documents together can get you into York County, School County, Lancaster County, typically just by presenting those at the front door to their sheriff's deputies or security guards, whoever it is, and then allows you to avoid, again, the lines and the screening process and things like that. So attorneys who do more business out of county and have had that experience, they grow frustrated here locally with having to go through the process and having their bags picked through and things like that, and court documents and those types of things. So the Bar Association, I think, is certainly taking the position we would be happy to bear the expense of the production of the cards, whether it would like to be done internally through Central Booking and have them produced there at appointment times that could be made, and pay a few dollars for the cards and the time and everything involved, or whether, if the commissioners were acceptable to this idea, whether it would be done privately if we had a third party, some other office supply company or something produce these for us, and we would again bear that expense. And our thought would be that it would only be members of the Lebanon County Bar Association, attorneys who are practicing law here typically on a regular basis and go through our Bar Association. So there is some still degree of accountability and participation to maintain that and become participate in that system.
My other question, it may only be slightly relevant, but are you representing, are you here as our solicitor with a question from them, or are you here on their behalf?
Yeah, no, sure, yeah.
So we're not paying you to present
You're
this.
not paying me to present this, no.
Because I would be very upset.
No. I was asked by the Bar Association to present, and this has come up at Bar Association executive meetings, and I've kind of volunteered and said I will come here and just relay this presentation. I am not doing this as the county solicitor. I'm not charging any money to do this.
I just didn't know how it got.
And you're not really doing it as our solicitor either. You're
not at all.
Yeah,
no. And I don't really, from a legal perspective, to kind of switch hats and put it on, I don't believe there's. I mean, this is just an internal policy for the commissioners to make, and this is obviously something that you can adopt just like you do any other security protocol or measures or things like that for the county. I think I'm just sort of the messenger here on behalf. This would be the Bar Association's request. So.
Well, Dave, I don't think it's a secret that I'm on record as strongly opposed to this measure. And just to shoot a hole in the request, when we have our ID cards, if something goes awry for whatever reason, somebody leaves our employment, maybe has made a threat, anything of that nature, it's simply a matter of deactivation of the card, and they no longer can come in. But a card that isn't magnetic or goes through our process can be duplicated. I mean, somebody can take a picture of someone standing in line, go home and make that card. It's just not a fail-safe. It's not a secure system. And once we give it to the attorneys, then they pass it off and they give it to their researchers, and they're coming and going. I mean, it's
The whole idea of impersonating an officer of the court would be that'd be pretty risk-taking to me.
And if
But I was just thinking ahead of, I mean, somebody giving to a colleague, you know, a false document to get into the courthouse would be, wow. I mean, that would be pretty dangerous territory, I would think.
I understand, but to finish my statement, I go through security because I want to know what the system is doing, how our guards are being treated, how our guards treat the public. I don't think that there should be exceptions, because once you open that door, the next person and the next person also wants an exception, and the security system gets weaker and weaker. Is any system absolutely perfect? No, it is not. And if some things got through, it was not a gun. Let's be clear. It could have been a ruler. I mean, I can understand. It's not acceptable, but I understand how it happened. There will be incidents where things slip through, but I am strongly against opening this up.
Are you here representing the opinion of the judiciary?
I will at least be prepared to echo what Judge Tilwalk has said in his capacity as President Judge to the Bar Association.
Okay, and that's because I'd like to hear that, you know, opinion as well.
In essence, and I think hopefully both Dave and Brian were present for the last gathering of the bench bar breakfast, at which time Judge Tilwalk had expressed his perspective, which is in accord with what I heard Dave Warner present today, that if the Bar Association could develop a system whereby there would be a photo ID system, and he would be willing to consider that as an exception and allow for that for members of the Lebanon County Bar Association. At least he'd be prepared to accept that as under certain controlled circumstances that could be defined. And I assume having a photo ID system and or the commissioner's preference, whether they'd rather have what amounts to a county ID and maybe have a little more control over it in that sense.
Well, the problem with a county ID card would allow them entrance at any time, which I don't think is something that we want to accomplish.
And I wasn't sure whether a commissioner, there would be some form of county ID that would be a non-access card.
Well, it could be without the electronic access. I
Yeah.
would assume it could be the same thing with the photo on it.
And we,
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, we do have a safety committee as well, but for many reasons, and some of them which I've articulated, the county has always had the opinion that no, it is not wise to open this Pandora's box, because it will not stop with the attorneys. So my point of view has not changed.
I would like, if it would help with putting the information together, to get something in writing in his absence from Judge Tilwalk, so that we have that piece of his opinion as to how he feels about it. And also maybe talk to another county, a contiguous county that is allowing that, and see if it is a Pandora's box that has led to requests from other groups that feel that they should also be so afforded, you know, that access. So I think those are some pieces of information I'd like to have.
For the attorneys, are there counties locally in the vicinity that do not grant you the courtesy of providing your identification as an attorney and let you in the door, so to speak? What does Dauphin do? Because I heard Lancaster, I heard Berks, York, Cumberland. I did not hear Dauphin.
Dauphin has an attorney entrance at their courthouse, which I was directed to just by a local attorney up there, that it was avoid the main entrances there and go in this other attorney entrance where you can accomplish the same thing. And I think they have a conveyor belt, like X-ray system or whatever there, where I think you still have to put your bag through that, but otherwise you kind of just pass through by showing, again, your bar license card, and then your driver's license. So a different entrance and somewhat more expedited process. But York County, Lancaster County, Berks have more, and I believe Schuylkill last time I was there, have more of just that, show the card, show your ID, and pass right through. So
It's really about the degree of red tape. It's not about the search process, I think, for the majority of the attorneys. It's really, is there a way to expedite the process? So I don't know if there were other alternatives besides this, but that's really the ultimate issue, not wanting to be late for court or be delayed because of the process of what I think most would regard as a reasonable search process.
And I think that you gave the answer yourself, and they have to get here a little bit earlier. I mean, we all put our pants on one leg at a time, or pantyhose, and just to say we're an attorney, so we're special. With no disrespect, yes, with no disrespect. We're all people. We should all follow the same rules and use those monitors. That's what they're there for. The courts, because of the courts, we have to do this. In the past, we did not have those monitors. We have to provide security, and here we are weakening it for the courts that we had to create it for. It makes no sense to me. I'm sorry. It just doesn't.
Are you suggesting that we shouldn't have it for employees?
No, I'm saying when we first set it up,
I'm going on your everybody's
what
secret
happened?
program.
What happened was there were a bunch of bomb scares. And there's such a thing that we have to have security for the courtroom. So it was either put it down front or put it upstairs.
There are statutes that prohibit weapons in a
Yes.
court building. Dave could probably, Dave, do you know of a requirement that courthouse security be in place?
I don't know of a requirement that courthouse security is in place, but the juxtaposition of the statutes, which are relatively new and might have even, the statutes prohibiting weapons and firearms happened after the repeated bomb scare.
Okay.
The mention of an attorney entrance, would it be possible to establish that downstairs with utilizing the sheriff's department or something?
You're going to add a burden to the sheriff's office.
Well, that raises another question for me, with wondering what their opinion would be of such a change. Because since they're involved with security of this building and so on, to some degree they're accessible for that. Just another piece of this thing that I'd like to get an opinion.
I personally think there are a lot of security considerations that aren't being discussed, other than saving time for the attorneys, and so essentially that's what this comes down to, I think, is saving time and inconvenience for the attorneys. As Commissioner Litz said, it would be expanding the universe of people that don't have to go through security. And while you may not think of that, you may only think of the individual going through security as being a risk or not. I'll just give a quick scenario. If someone's outside the doors meeting with their attorney before they come in the building, they drop a weapon into a briefcase bag or something of the attorney because they know the attorney's not going to go through the security, they're going to go around it. They retrieve the weapon when they get in the building because they're the only ones that know that they put it in there.
And that really
That's
happened.
not-
There were newspaper articles to
That's
that
not very
effect.
far-fetched, and
Yeah.
so I don't mean to use this term lightly, but it's just mules. Using people who don't have to go through security as mules to get weapons in intentionally is always a concern, and that's something the sheriff's office can talk about, or anybody else in law enforcement. Another security concern I would have would be the distraction of the monitors, who have to screen the people who are now asking to go around them and take their attention off of doing their job at the magnetometer. And how is that bar list? I know you have to be sworn into the bar or entered into the bar, but administering those IDs, and if somebody loses one and so on, those are just some thoughts right off the top as I'm sitting here, and that's before talking with anyone like chief of police or sheriff or Brad Seifert is the deputy sheriff here that has focused the most on our security, and he would be security concerns about it that a person who's simply looking for it to be a little easier is not thinking of. You know, there
Opportunity to do a little bit of brainstorm. I think that's been the value of these work sessions for all of us. What about the possibility of them adhering to the same security issue, but to design a fast track system where if they approach the monitors that they are an attorney and they're coming in for a court case, that they could move to the head of the line? I mean, is that something that could work?
I don't know if attorneys want that for themselves. I mean,
Well, they're asking
that's
for
like,
an exception. So
seeing
I think the
Parker
public
walking to the front.
would really ridicule the attorneys at that point. I don't think it's going to fly with the public at all.
I'm not just here to shoot down Dave Warner. I'm just pointing out some realities that over the years we've come to be mindful of.